Everybody out there in the land. This is CrystalMansionLegacy.com with a HHN Chatcast, a live Chatcast. I haven't done one of these in quite some time. I guess it's kind of fitting after this weekend. I was planning on doing one of these right before the event started, or before the event was to get going. But I figured after this weekend it might be a good opportunity to go ahead and do one of these. Now these are a little bit more informal than the real My Talking Heads, the ones that are taped. It's just me talking even longer and probably droning on even longer than normal. It is what it is. I have some topics and things that I want to discuss as we move forward here. It took me a little bit time here. I'm about a minute late on the chatcast because I had other things that were coming up at the time, but nevertheless, here we are. So it is time for the first chatcast of this year. Like I said, I haven't done one of these. It's been quite some time. Let me make sure that everything is functioning properly before I do anything else. These live chatcasts that I've done in the past sometimes tend to go awry for me, so I want to make sure that everything is up to speed. It looks like we are live, so that's good. So we're good there. I can see this. Okay, got it. All right, so we got everything going. So anyway, let's get started here. So the first thing that I wanted to address is just general Horror Nights updates. Obviously, the event is coming up quite quickly. I think it's less than 38 days, 37 days at this point. So we're coming to the finish line. And as I'm talking through this, if you guys want to ask questions or anything like that, you can. That's why I call it a chat cast. It is what it is. Probably not the best quality, but nevertheless, I am a poor person, so I can't afford better equipment. I just use kind of my phone and and just kind of go with it. So yeah. So the event is rapidly approaching. We've seen the start of street construction going on around. We've got what I affectionately refer to as HHN lighting rig porn, because everybody and their mothers is down. Yes, poor people are awesome. It is what it is. I am poor, so I can't afford better equipment. That's why I'm still I'm working on trying to get a microphone for some of the real My Talking Heads, because I know that sometimes I do have a very quiet voice, so for me to project out is sometimes hard for me. So I'm working on getting a microphone, but microphones are expensive. So it is what it is. But anyway, so going back into the general update portion of the show here, we've seen some lighting rigs pop up. I was not able to get down to Universal. This time of year I'm usually down there more times than not, looking for construction updates and things of that nature. But and usually I'm there once or twice a week to sort of update what's been going on. But I do work for a living, so I'm not I'm not able to get down there as much. Last week I was only able to get down there once. So I know from the first time when I believe I was down there, I want to say it was last Wednesday. They started putting up the lighting rigs and stuff. The lighting rigs, while most of them will be used for Halloween Horror Nights, some of them are also going to be used for Rock the Universe. So it's not just Horror Nights lighting rigs. There are also Rock the Universe lighting rigs, especially the ones over near Mel's. You might see a stage or a small stage being constructed over there for Rock the Universe. I don't know how it's going to work this year, because over in that area, of course, they have the Cinematic Spectacular or Celebration. Whatever. I want to keep calling it the Cinematic Spectacular, the Cinematic Celebration. There's the permanent lighting rig for the Cinematic Celebration. So I'm not sure how Rock the Universe is going to work this year. I don't know where if they're going to do that extra stage or not. Okay, I don't know what happened there, but I kind of lost the stream. I don't know what the hell. Sometimes this is why I don't like to do these things, because like technology and me just don't mix. So it is what it is. But at least it's allowing me to reconnect, and I don't have to start another fucking live stream. I don't know, but technology and me don't mix. Which is why sometimes I stray away from these things, because it never goes the way that I want it to go. But nevertheless, here we are. I was talking about the lighting rig over by the Central Park area. Like I said, I'm not sure because that one that's specifically used for the Cinematic Celebration. I'm not sure where they're going to put the Rock the Universe stages this year, or the temporary stage. I don't know how that's going to work. But normally the lighting rigs that are over in that area are used for Rock the Universe as well as Halloween Horror Nights. So not all of the lighting rigs that you see around the park will be exclusively used for Halloween Horror Nights. The tall ones, the standy ones, which they've gotten sort of savvy the last couple of years with those lighting rigs because they put the fog machines in there now. They sort of hide the fog machines in the lighting rigs, which is actually kind of cool. Where in the past you just have like a random fog box somewhere, off to the side. Now they physically put the fog machines inside the base of the lighting rigs, which is actually kind of clever. But so not all those lighting rigs are going to be used for Horror Nights. They're sort of or they will be used for Horror Nights, but they're all going to be used for Rock the Universe. But like I said, I don't know, where certain things are going to go this year because of the new show. I just don't know. But nevertheless, we have the lighting rigs are all over the place these days. It's around this time that we start seeing some stuff being put out in the streets as well. Usually little things. Usually it's not until mid-August where we start seeing the bulk of Scare Zone construction to pop up around the studios. So we're still, I think, about a week or so away from really seeing, visible signs of props and things in the streets. But as I'm saying this, there could be stuff being put out right now, but I would not expect big props and things to be put out until sometime next week is my guess, based on what I know. But you never know. They could try to start early, And of course, we could always have an incident like we had last year where we had a fucking hurricane come through opening weekend and they had to take everything away. So, it is what it is. I don't remember where the hell I saw it, but obviously there is no Bill and Ted this year. The jury is kind of still out on where Academy of Villains is going to be. I know where it's going to be, but I don't want to say anything too revealing. But obviously this time in the past, we've also seen, Fear Factor Live close down. We start seeing the sign being taken away so they can put up the Bill and Ted signage and all that stuff. That obviously has not happened yet. So, who knows? Chances are Academy of Villains is going to be going in Fear Factor Live. So if that was the case, I would assume that Fear Factor Live would be going down very shortly here, probably within the next week or two, to transform the stage. If Academy of Villains was to be going in Fear Factor Live, it is what it is. But anyway, so I saw, the point is I saw somebody said that they were pointing out that, in the past we would see the sign over there and Fear Factor be closed down and it hasn't done so yet, womp womp, no Bill and Ted, and the point is that if there was to be a show in Fear Factor Live this year, chances are it's not going to be as intense as Bill and Ted is, or was, in terms of set construction and things of that nature. So they might not need the amount of time that they used to have, for Bill and Ted. And if Academy of Villains was to go into Fear Factor Live, they're already probably rehearsing somewhere off-site. They don't have to rehearse on-site. The only time they would have to rehearse on-site, if it was to go in Fear Factor Live, if they had, more set elements and things like that, they would have to use for their choreography and things of that nature. But because they probably are doing rehearsals somewhere else, they really wouldn't need to go in there to play off any kind of set that they would need until closer to the event. So this would not be like a Bill and Ted situation. But, like I said, I would expect it to close down shortly if that was to be the case. I've already said too much. But yeah, so general updates, that's pretty much where we are with the event. There's this will segue into what I really want to talk about, and that's what happened this past weekend. This past weekend, of course, we had an oops moment. We've had two oops moments this year. One was from Hollywood, not from Orlando, the Hollywood side of things, but we obviously had an Orlando oops moment. Again, this is nothing new. I mean, these leaks and things like that happen all the time. The problem is, which will tie in also to the general Horror Nights updates that I want to talk about, is the release schedule. Every year, Horror Nights has a release schedule where they, or at least for the last couple of years, when they've started. Because in the past, anybody who's been following Horror Nights for forever, especially like the last 20 years or so, 15, 20 years or so, they would release everything at the end of August. So the site would kind of go live. Generally, it was like the last week of August, usually the last weekend of August, somewhere around the last couple of weeks of August. And they would reveal everything, at that time. These systematic, revealing of houses through Twitter and the blog and stuff. So, yeah, I've been going since 2000. So this is my 18th year, 19th year in a row going. I don't know. I can't. I stopped keeping track a long time ago. But these systematic revealings of houses, is sort of it's a fairly new phenomenon. I believe they started it in 2012. That was the reveal week year, I think. Correct? Where they had I think it was the last week of the event. They had this reveal week thing going on, and then that sort of transitioned the following couple of years into revealing houses, every so often throughout the course of the summer. Which is actually that's a better way of doing things these days because everybody is so plugged into social media. It's a way to build hype over the course of a couple of months rather than waiting until the end of August over the course of a reveal week or just kind of information dumping everything at one time. So for the last couple of years, I mean, they have these schedules that they follow in order to reveal stuff. And that could be, they could have deals with the certain IP property holders. There could be a release that's coming that they want to, reveal something around the course of the time when whatever property is coming is about to be released or, so on and so forth. So they have a plan. Every year they have a plan that, that they use to go in and reveal these things. But what's the saying? Sometimes the best laid plans go awry. Every year there's always something, whether it's a leak from Publix or whether it's a leak from Burger King or whether it's a leak from Universal themselves, or sometimes in like these foreign or overseas travel blogs or whatever, they accidentally reveal things, months in advance. In terms of leaks, like bad leaks that have happened over, throughout Horror Nights the last couple of years, the worst was definitely 2014. That year tended to have a lot of things that were revealed early by IP holders or by Publix or by Burger King or whatever. That was a particularly bad year for leaks. This year was fine. They had it's the first time since they've started these systematic revealing of things that the release schedule has been on track. Everything has basically fallen in line up until a certain point. And that point was when, for whatever reason, they decided to send Mike Aiello out to Midsummer Scream with the Horror Nights folks out there in Hollywood with John Murdy and friends. That is when the release schedule got all sorts of upended. And based on what I was told, it was because they were supposed to reveal something at Midsummer Scream. I don't know. Well, I know what it was, but in the spirit of not revealing, because I'm not going to confirm nor deny. I mean, we know the Poltergeist and Halloween thing. I'll cop to that. But for the speculation maps and things that are floating around out there right now, and things that may or may not have been leaked on the internet, for the full lineup, I'm not going to confirm nor deny those. But something was supposed to be announced at Midsummer Scream, at least according to what I was being told. And that's when everything got all upended. The release schedule got all thrown out of whack because of that. There was another thing in there, too, with one property one specific IP property that gave them a little problem. That there was a lot of confusion over this one particular property and what they were going to do and how they were going to do it, and it took them quite a while to really pin down what they were going to do in this particular house, and what they were going to use and how they were going to use it, and so on and so forth, and that got also in the way of the release schedule. So there was, and that was the Midsummer Scream was last weekend. I believe, was it last weekend? These weeks are starting to roll together. I believe it was last weekend. But the one property that was giving them all sorts of fits, apparently, was supposed to be released around that time. And that didn't happen. And then Mike went over to Midsummer Scream, and they were supposed to reveal something out there, and that never happened. So everything got all out of whack. And it happens. It's I find it hilarious. I said it in My Talking Head a couple of weeks ago, that everybody gets like, oh my God, how could this happen? It happens, Yeah, I mean, because here's the thing about the Midsummer Scream thing. Based on what I was told, Mike Aiello going out to Midsummer Scream was a very last-minute addition. Mike was not supposed to be out there. And the idea was, because when you think about it, Mike is not, Mike is still involved in Horror Nights, but he's not involved in Horror Nights like he was in the past. So if you were going to send somebody out to Midsummer Scream, that was deeply involved in the process, you would send somebody like Patrick Braillard or Blake Roswell, one of those guys who are literally in the trenches designing the event this year. If they were going to talk about the event, I understand that Mike is people know who Mike is. He's basically become the spokesperson for all these special events, whether it's Horror Nights, or whether it's the Cinematic Celebration, or whether it's the Christmas stuff, or Mardi Gras, whatever. I mean, he's basically that guy. He's the guy that oversees all the different things that all the special events that Universal puts on these days. So he's not as involved in one thing or another anymore. So for me, it would have made more sense to send like a Broswell or a Braillard out there. If they were going to really talk about the year's event, because those are the guys that are creating the event this year, and of course other people, but those are the main guys. You got Broswell, you got Braillard. So when I was for the Midsummer Scream thing, I was I like Mike, don't get me wrong, but it was it almost seemed like he was out of place a little bit, where it was he sort of bullshitted his way a little bit through that whole presentation, and I think that one of the things that made it even worse was that they were supposed to reveal something, and for whatever reason they didn't. Of course, Murdy accidentally revealed the Trick or Treat Scare Zone, which wasn't supposed to happen, but nevertheless it did. But the point of all this is that the schedule got all up in chaos. And in terms of the leak that happened on Saturday, one of those may have been the house that was going to be announced at Midsummer Scream. Again, I don't want to confirm or deny anything, but the other house, one of the two houses, was supposed to be revealed this week. So as we speak, this coming week, and one of the other property was supposed to be revealed at Midsummer Scream, and it just didn't get revealed. So that is where, at least what I'm being told. I mean, you take it how you will, but that's what I was told. So when you have all that, when the release schedule gets all out of whack, and we're getting to the point of no return here in terms of Horror Nights releases and things of that nature, shit's gonna happen. It's just the nature of the beast. I don't know, because the graphic that the hotel had, and I refused to share the graphic and whatever, but the graphic that the hotel had seems to be a package. Because I don't believe the hotel was actually on site. I think it was an offsite hotel. I think it was a Hilton somewhere. So what probably happened was the marketing department had sent these promotional packages, this on a disc, or not a disc, like a USB thumb drive or something, and they were supposed to start airing that probably, if I had to guess, this week. But somebody, whoever runs the hotel, accidentally started running it early. So I mean, there's I hear people all the time who was just perusing social media the last couple of days. Everybody was sort of blaming marketing for this and whatever, but it's really not marketing. I mean, marketing, like I said, they probably sent these people a graphics package, and they weren't supposed to run it until this week. But at the same time, you have one of those two properties that should have been announced already, and one that was scheduled to be announced this week. That again, everything got all upended. So it was just a calamity of errors basically on both sides. Now there's some funny speculation that somebody just did it on purpose, which would be hilarious if that was the case, but also horrible. Like, why would you do that? Like, why would you just cause, what does the Joker say? The Dark Knight Joker, or even like, was that the Dark Knight? Some people just want to watch the world burn. Was that the Dark Knight? I mean, it could be that as well. I don't know, but the point is that things got all out of whack, and they were doing good there for a while. Everything was on track, and things were being revealed when they were supposed to be revealed, and then that week, the week and the week before Midsummer Scream, is when everything just went upended. So when that happens, things are gonna, not, follow through the way that they should be followed through, and we're in this situation. There is supposed to be, according to the schedule, is me going back to the original schedule. There's supposed to be an announcement tomorrow, and if here's the other thing about the leaks. When these things happen, like I'll bring up 2014 again, because Halloween in 2014 was actually leaked by that website, the Halloween Movies website. It was leaked weeks in advance about the property coming to the event, and based on what I was told, they could have nipped it in the bud and just announced Halloween. At that time, and the powers that be, were basically butthurt about the announcement getting leaked early, and they didn't capitalize on it. They didn't just come out and say, well, yeah, and then that caught like the picture, the famous picture from that year of him walking into Publix when they still hadn't announced Halloween, and the logo was on the Publix standee. And him pointing at the logo because they still hadn't announced it yet. And this was like in late August. What they need to do, like with these, especially for a leak this big, because this isn't like a small thing, one house. This is two houses that got leaked early. What they need to do is like let's say they stay on their schedule and they do announce something tomorrow, just announce both. Come out and announce, Poltergeist and Halloween right out, and just get it out of the way. And with everything else, with the other whoever leaked, supposedly the lineup, around the internet, that's unfortunate. Like, I'm actually more upset that somebody did that, than the leak that happened through, the hotel. I know that I don't visit forums. I've said this many times in the past. I don't visit forums. I don't visit Facebook groups anymore. I don't do any of that stuff. I don't like the atmosphere that it creates, especially in forums. And now more so stuff in like I don't even visit the annual pass holder Facebook group. I left that ages ago. But like you have all these Facebook groups and stuff now for Horror Nights that I don't enjoy. The culture that it brings today. There was a period there in the last couple of years where Horror Nights fandom, like there's all this talk now about I'll go off on another tangent. There's all this talk now about the poisoning of like Star Wars culture, where really the fandom of Star Wars, where dude, I lived through the prequels. Okay, so this new call that all these the Star Wars fandom has now grown toxic is nothing new. The Star Wars fandom had grown toxic way back in 1997 when George Lucas decided to decided to not let Han shoot first. That's when all the Star Wars fandom started to go downhill back then. So this new sort of poisoning of like fandom with Star Wars is nothing new to me. And the same can be said with like Horror Nights fans. I often compare Horror Nights fans, the diehard fans, to diehard Star Wars fans. I've done it for years because that sort of angry mentality when something doesn't go their way or or they don't like something or anything along those lines is very similar to that sort of fandom. So I sort of disassociated myself with a lot of like I said, message boards and Facebook groups and things because I just don't like that toxic environment. Yeah, I mean, like see, because here's the thing. I've been going to the event since 2000, so every year since 2000. So like I said, this was my 19th year going in a row. And funny story, like when I went in 2000, I vowed never to return because it was such a horrible experience. It was packed as fuck. We really didn't get a chance to do anything. It was so busy that we didn't really get a chance to experience anything. So I vowed never to come back, and lo and behold, I came back to the very next year, and I've been back ever since. But there's always been. I mean, it's there's nothing wrong with being a fan of something. There's nothing wrong with that. You can, there's nothing wrong with having opinions about stuff. I mean, it's just the nature of us as humans. I mean, no, I mean there are so there's nothing wrong with being a fan or being a hardcore fan. The problem is when, as a fan, you start thinking that because you are a diehard fan, that it's all about you. And, that's where, things start taking that turn. It's like, the whole ruining my childhood mentality. That's where, fandom can turn poisonous. And with Horror Nights, like I said, there's always been, that culture of diehard, fandom and things of that nature. In 2012, we'll say 2011, but I'll say 2012. 2012 is where that poisoning of the well started. That's where everything started to go south, and that's where all the fans, the diehard fans, started to, create that mentality that, because Horror Nights was trying to go into a different direction and trying to do different things, trying to, instead of, fans had gotten used to them catering to them, whether it was the interactive websites and, things of that nature, because the vast majority of the public doesn't care about that stuff. It's a sad fact, but that is the fact. Like people, my dad, who comes to the event with me all the time, has no fucking idea the backstory of Jack the Clown even. I mean, and he loves Jack the Clown, but he has no idea any of that stuff, and he can care less about that, But the fans they started to, because the event was trying to cater more towards the outside public, the diehard fans started to become more angered towards the event. I'm going to bring up The Walking Dead because that was the point. At that point when they started to really focus on selling the event with IPs and using stuff like The Walking Dead to bring people in, that's where the fandom just went this way, and that's where I started. And I started HHN Legacy really in 2011, but I started to do the website and stuff in 2012. And after my first year of doing HHN Legacy, I actually stopped for a year because I just couldn't handle it anymore. Couldn't. I think Empress, you were around back then too, I believe, doing YouTube stuff and whatnot. Because I used to do YouTube stuff way back then, and for about a year I stopped. I took my YouTube channel down. I even stopped doing the website for a while because I just didn't want to be involved in that anymore. I had a questioner mentality in my mind. It was just like, it's just not even worth it. It's just not worth it. It's not worth the headache and the the mental strain of trying to deal with diehard fans and things of that nature. I'm a very opinionated person. I have my own opinions and stuff like that, but I also I pride myself on being a rational person. Where even if I don't like something, I try to see both sides of the issue. Like, okay, well, they're doing it for this purpose, so I might not like it, but I mean, it makes sense from a business standpoint. So I always come at, especially with Horror Nights, I come at it from that aspect. Well, yeah, because you used to do stuff with Owen and those guys and whatnot, but after like I said, when I left, when I took a break, I tell people I took a break because I just couldn't deal with it anymore. I just didn't want to deal with the noise and whatever. And that's about the times where I stopped going into forums. Because for years I was one of those guys that was in the forums. I used to do the forums all the time. Every year, speculating with stuff and talking with other people about it. But I stopped because I just couldn't deal with that poisoning fandom anymore. I just didn't want to deal with it. So when I started doing Legacy again, I just stopped that altogether. I mean, you're never going to convince somebody otherwise. So it's I don't try to convince people about things, or it's if that's the way you feel, that's the way you feel. I don't care. I'm still going to have my own views on the situation. But that sort of mentality, I just couldn't handle. I totally forgot where I was going with this conversation, but we're gonna move away from that for a minute, and we're gonna continue on with the leaks. I think I was talking about the leaks, but yeah. So with the the sort of the switch in that, I'm gonna get my point here. remember, it is the elitist mentality. That's the thing, and I hate to say it, but I also don't like to associate myself with a lot of these other big theme park websites for that reason. Because that's just not me. I don't go to the event, to try to get free thing. I don't have media, and I work for the media. I choose not to get media because I like to come at the event from the fans' perspective. I pay for everything. I don't get free things. I don't, so I try to disassociate myself from that as well. I am very much alone in this world of Horror Nights fandom here because I do come at things a little bit differently than most people, and I'm not afraid to express my opinion about something, and some people don't like that. Especially when it calls out some of the hypocrisy that other places have in terms of doing the website for, or doing whatever they're doing for theme parks really for the mentality of like, hey, we get to do this for free. I don't do that. I never like to do that. I've always come at the event from a fan perspective, always. I've never once gotten anything for free, and I never will. So, because I feel that also taints my opinion about something. Um, I don't buy express passes. I've never once had an express pass. I always, I like to be in the trenches with people. If there's an hour and a half wait for Stranger Things, I'm going to wait an hour and a half in line. And, and I feel that doesn't taint my opinion about something. Because if I'm waiting an hour and a half in line for a house, that house better be worth an hour and a half wait, not just try to scoot or cheat the system by going through with the express passes. Express passes are fine. I've never had, I've always wanted to just to do it normally. Well, yeah, the frequent fear passes were a godsend back in the day because, like I said, I've never had express passes. There were times, especially during the Legendary Truth, Horror, and Earth years, where I had friends that had the Gap Pass that I would just to get the tasks done to piggyback off of that. If I to be able to do the tasks, because if with those games, more times than not, unless you were savvy enough, like I did most of them without any kind of Gap Pass or whatever, but for the vast majority of those tasks, I didn't have that, so I had to do the 7-in-1s or 8-in-1s or whatever, or the 5 times through and things like that for one night. I didn't have the luxury of an express or Gap Pass, so I had to do all that stuff in real time, and trust me, that was fucking hard. Especially when you had to do like the more like the 8-in-1 tasks and things. I used to have to try to do it, like I'd have to hope that a Wednesday was dead or a Sunday was dead, so I had to be able to do it all in oh my god, that's horrible. Well, I mean, yeah, you have the crazy people, the I don't want to say drunk people, because that's another thing, is that there's this mentality that with the drinking and stuff or whatever. I don't have a problem with people drinking at the event. I partake in a beer or two when I'm there, and I know people, other people that do. The problem is that when you get people that are out of hand, and you get stuff like that where people are just crazy. The world is topsy turvy these days, and people are just people are just nuts. I mean, that's the bottom line. And you add alcohol into the mix, and that just exacerbates the issue. But anyway, I'm going to get back on track. So the leaks. Yeah. So there was like I said, there was a schedule and everything got upended. And we are getting, close to the end of the event. So, like I said, there's supposed to be an announcement, tomorrow, scheduled for tomorrow. But because all that stuff has been, sort of, yes, leaks. So the schedule, because it's been all upended, I'm not sure if that's still going to occur tomorrow or not. It's very possible, and like I said earlier, what they really need to do is they need to nip this in the bud. And if they are going to announce something tomorrow, just announce the 2 that were leaked. Just with the graphic, announce those and get it out of the way. And don't be spiteful and wait until Publix puts the fucking standee out in 2 weeks, and then those things are still on the fucking standee, and you haven't announced anything yet. Don't be spiteful, just do it. This is going to happen. They know it happens. It's not like they're oblivious to the fact that there are leaks. It happens all the fucking time. So, they should be prepared for stuff like that at this point and just, fucking go with it. The problem becomes if there are deals or stuff that you have with the IP holders, the rights holders, and things of that nature, that you have to, they want it announced at a certain time, yes. But they have to announce, or they, if there are, IP deals in place where, they tell them that you have to announce, things at a certain time. That's where, things get sort of, where they have to wait, unless the IP holder or rights holders gives them permission to do it. The problem with this case, if we're talking about the two specific IPs that were leaked, one of those two was already supposed to be announced, and for whatever reason they didn't announce it. So, it's not like they're being held up by rights people saying we can't announce this. I don't know. So it is what it is. But leaks. I'm going to go back and I'm going to watch this live cast and I'm going to find out why I went on that tangent before. And it's going to bug the shit out of me, but it is what it is. So we're going to move on from the leaks, from that leak in particular. Like I said, I'm not going to confirm nor deny the other, all the entire lineup that was leaked along the internet or across the interwebs, because that's just not my style. If you've been following me for a long time, you know that I don't do that. I don't like to really talk about leaks per se. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's just it is what it is. I mean, again, when you're at this juncture where we are coming up to the end, you have 6 houses left to announce, and you haven't announced, or 5 houses, is 6 houses or 5 houses? You have a big chunk of houses that you have not announced yet, and you're getting to the end date, which is supposed to be the 28th, is when everything is supposed to be all revealed. So 5 houses left. So, and you're running out of time. So, it's like, at this point, it is what it is. It's going to happen, especially when your plans go awry, especially when things, you had a plan and for whatever reason you fucked it up halfway through. And then, because again, this year was so good with them. Well, it's not. It's not solely marketing's fault, because marketing gave out, because working in the media, I know a little bit about how marketing works. So what more than likely happened, again, I don't know if you were here before, but one of the 2 houses that was on that graphic was supposed to have been announced already. And the other house was supposed to have been announced this week. So what probably happened is the hotel had gotten hold of the graphics package that, the advertising package that, yes, marketing had sent them. But marketing doesn't put the graphic up there. Ultimately, the hotel was responsible for putting up that graphic. Why Paris Hilton? Is she still a thing anymore? That's a name I have not heard in a long time. But yeah, so yes, marketing sends out the graphics package that the hotel's supposed to run, but ultimately the hotel, it's their responsibility to follow, when the Clarion. Okay, yeah, I didn't know what hotel it was, so I just knew it was a hotel. But they, they're supposed to follow, and who knows what we have no way of knowing. It really doesn't matter what hotel it was. The point is that they had a package that they were supposed to start advertising, but we don't know when that was supposed to happen. There's no way of knowing that unless you were the person who put the graphics package in the TV. I'm sure that if I had to take a guess, the package that was sent the hotel had a date on it, said do not use this before this date, and somebody overlooked it and did it anyway, So, but it is what it is, especially when you get to this point where you have a schedule that went awry about 2 weeks ago, and everything sort of went in opposite directions. But because I know for a fact that one of those 2 houses was not supposed to be announced until this week, that graphics package was not supposed to be up yet. I can tell you that with 99.99999% accuracy, that one of those 2 houses was not supposed to be announced until this week. So that's, in this case was not per se all of marketing's fault, but yes, marketing has, I guess it's not totally their fault, because like if that was the case, if what I was told was correct, then they were not supposed to put it up yet. So you can't blame marketing for that. For that, you have to blame the hotel, because the hotel just didn't follow the rules or didn't know. I mean, like at this point, we're speculating. What were the rules in terms of this specific graphic? When were they supposed to run it? Was there a date? For instance, there was an incident. I can't remember what year it was, but once again, it goes back to Publix. There was one of the standees was put out early, even though on the standee it said, "Do not put this out until this date." One Publix did it anyway, and one of the houses got leaked. I believe it was Silent Hill, the year that Silent Hill was out. So was that 2013? I believe it was that year. It was one of the video game houses, either Silent Hill or Resident Evil. But the Publix had put it out early, even though it clearly stated on the box, in 2012. So it clearly stated on that box not to put it out, until this date, and they did it anyway. So I mean, like, again, it happens. The point where you could start blaming marketing is when you have an official, like, Horror Nights billboard goes up on I-4 and reveals a house that hasn't been announced yet. At that point, then you can start blaming marketing for things like that and whatever. But in this case, this was not a marketing thing. This was the hotel. The hotel, yeah, so it was 2012. It was one of the video game years, I believe, where they put out the standee early. This wasn't like the Halloween situation in 2014 where they put out the standee on time, but they still hadn't fucking announced the house. In this case, they had just put it out early, and they weren't supposed to put it out early. So, if, like I said, if I had to guess, yes. But if I had to guess, what ultimately happened was the hotel just put up the graphic early, because based on what I'm told, one of those two houses was not supposed to be announced until this week, tomorrow. And like I said, because the schedule got all fucked up, I'm not even sure if they're going to continue with that. I don't know if they're going to announce something tomorrow or if they're going to wait until Thursday or Friday. I have no idea, because at this point, you've got to start announcing stuff, because if you're gonna keep doing that, you're running out of time. Unless they, just decide, like I said, if they want to be spiteful, which they've done in the past, because things have gotten leaked and they've gotten pissed. The Soul Collector thing. That was unfortunate. Even though I kind of knew what it was, I'm like, I knew people were gonna be pissed about it. I'm like, this is not gonna sit over well with people. But it is what it is. I'm not saying that marketing, doesn't do bad things. They have done bad things, but I also think it's unfair sometimes. I entered the contest too. I didn't win, but it is what it is. I mean, marketing does bad things, but it's not always marketing's fault. I know a lot of the diehard fans like to point a target at marketing all the time. They've basically become a punching bag for the event for the last couple of years, but it's not all their fault. I mean, their job is to sell the event, and however they see fit to sell the event is the way that it works. But marketing is also beholden to when and if we're pigeonholing it into this specific space, marketing is also beholden to when they announce houses. So and if they in a case like the public standee, the Halloween standee, that's already been sent out. That's already they have a schedule to put it out. They put it out on time. They can't really tell Publix, stop. We haven't announced Halloween yet. When it's a week before the fucking event. I'm exaggerating, but at that point they're kind of tied. So it is what it is. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes the best laid plans go awry, and shit happens. It is what it is. Anyway, let's move away from the leaks because we've talked way too much about that and got off on a really bad tangent. So I want to move on to this really quickly because I'm running out of my hour time limit that I always set for myself. Yeah, well, I mean, like, before I move on, I'll address that for a minute because, like, when especially the last 10 years or so or 8 years or so for Horror Nights, Horror Nights has moved into a different thing. Horror Nights has become something that's a lot more global these days. It's a lot more. There's a lot more moving parts. There's a lot more. You know, everybody has to be on the same page, whether it's marketing or whether it's art and design or whether it's the IP rights holder. Everybody has to be on the same page. And when everybody, when you have so many moving pieces and so many moving cogs, the cog is bound to get, held up somewhere at some point. Whether it's a big, a big jam or a small jam, it's bound to happen with so many moving parts and so many pieces that are involved these days. Because Horror Nights is much bigger these days than it was, 10 years ago. It's a much different event today than it was, like even back in 2011. It's a much different event these days than what it was back then. You're back when I first started going in 2000. It's a much different event, these days than it was back then. So, things are bound to happen. It is what it is. It happens. I just don't get bent out of shape like some people do. I guess it's because like I'm in a media business, so like I know how things work, and I know how, when communication breaks down, when there is a breakdown in communication, things fuck up. I mean, it is what it is. It does happen. I always find it funny when these leaks and stuff like that happen. People are like, "How could this happen?" And it's like, because it does. It's this giant operation that you have going on. And when everybody's not on the same page, shit happens. You have incidences like this. But I specifically, again, one last time, in an instance like this with the hotel, I just think that they fucked up and didn't and put it up early. Based on the knowledge that I know, they just put it up early. Well, yeah, and people do hold grudges, which is, it's unfortunate, and a lot of the diehards do hold grudges. The fucking Bill and Ted, is a great example of that. I am not the biggest fan of Bill and Ted. If you followed me last year, I was sad to see Bill and Ted go, but I also felt that Bill and Ted had to go. Bill and Ted, it had not been funny in a lot of years, and it had been around way too long. It lasted about 10 years past its life cycle, in my opinion. It sort of limped along the last couple years that it was around, and I got death threats from people because I was not sad to see Bill and Ted go. So I mean, like there's again, going back to that toxic fandom, holding grudges and things like that. I mean, it happens, but it is what it is. So moving on. Finally, I do want to address. Yeah, I got a death threat from somebody on Twitter that had to report him. First time I ever had to report anybody on social media, because I can take it. I get criticized a lot, so like I just don't care. But in this case, I was like, nah, I must have been in a bad mood that day. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, when that happens, it is what it is. But it goes back into the toxic fandom. I mean, there is, like I said, I compared the Star Wars fandom to the Horror Nights fandom. The sort of the current trend about being this toxic mentality, has been around for Horror Nights and the Horror Nights fandom for quite some time. For like at least the bad stuff for like the last 7 or 8 years. But it is what it is. So I want to move on to well, I don't want to make people look bad either, because that's not I hate doing that. I was bullied when I was a kid, so I know what it's like to be bullied. So and badly bullied, so I don't like to bully people, and I hate bullies. So like if you do that, then we're gonna have a problem. Which is why going back to that toxic thing and the forums and stuff, I just don't like that. So I stay away from it. But let's move on to. There's been some talk recently about the theme of this year, the overall vibe of this year. I'm on record as saying the very beginning of the event when I started doing the My Talking Heads, there's going to be a loose 80s theme this year for the event. And there's some people that are going around now that are like, there's no 80s theme to the event. And it's like, well, yes, there is. There is an 80s theme, but it's a loose 80s theme, like I alluded to earlier. Not in an earlier My Talking Head video from earlier in the season. There is a loose 80s theme, but it will not be like the themes that we've had in the past, where everything is just all encompassing and it's this big thing. Again, going back to what I was alluding to before about how the event has changed, this is sort of, I think, a good medium for the event to do things in this way, where you have like this sort of loose theme, loosely tying things together, some things together, but also not sort of hammering it home, and not like I was saying before about, the interactive websites and things about, sort of the general public just doesn't really want to, they don't care. It's sad to say, but they just don't care. They don't care about certain things, but it's there. It's still present. So people, the average person can look at. Let me. I don't want to spoil anything. The average person can look at Stranger Things and see, oh, that takes place in the 80s. Or the average person can look at, the description for Dead Exposure. Be like, oh, that takes place in the 80s. There is a, sort of a loose theme there. And I think to sort of dismiss it, because I've seen some people just say, oh, there's no theme. It's like, no, there is a theme there. But it's just not, it's not as prominent. And one of the excuses that people use is, well, how could this possibly tie into an 80s theme? Trick or Treat's a good example, because Trick or Treat doesn't tie into the 80s at all, right? But there's always exceptions. There's always exceptions to themes. We've had that for years. The diehard fans love to praise 2008, right? For its Bloody Mary stuff and whatever, blah blah blah. There were exceptions to that theme in 2008. Doomsday is one of them. Doomsday does not fit into the overall theme, so it is what it is. I mean, there are exceptions to everything. 2009, you had Leave It to Cleaver, and you also had The Spawning. Didn't quite fit into the whole rip from the silver screen thing. You can make an argument for Leave It to Cleaver, but wasn't exactly ripped from the silver screen. No, Trick or Treat's not set in the 80s. I thought it was as well when I first heard that Trick or Treat was coming, back in November of last year or whatever, as a house. Once I started hearing about this sort of 80s thing, I question, because I get a lot of flack for this as well. I'm not the biggest Trick or Treat fan out there, and I haven't watched the movie in quite a while. But so I had to go to my Trick or Treat diehard friends and sort of ask them. I was like, "Is this set in the 80s?" Like, I was like, I don't remember the movie that well. But I think what Trick or Treat in particular, because again, I don't want to spoil things, but with Trick or Treat in particular, you can look at that as sort of a neutral time frame, because I don't think or believe that they actually say what year it is, and just the way that the movie is presented, it could be any year. It's kind of a nebulous. Yeah, it's a horror anthology, but the whole vibe of the movie, it can be, it doesn't have a definite era that it's in. It could be any era. It's not important. It's not important to the overall story of the film. There are other exceptions to the 80s theme this year. One of which I will not get into now, because, like I said, I don't want to confirm or deny anything. That are going to be exceptions. I'm not going to comment on that comment. but there are, because I don't want to confirm or deny anything, but there are going to be exceptions. Correct. I think there are cell phones in trick or treat. But still, I mean, you can look at it, as sort of a nebulous time, and it doesn't really have like, you know, like, oh, this is definitely 2000. When that movie came out, 2007. This is definitely 2007. I mean, you can look at it as sort of like like a nebulous time. So I mean, there is a loose theme. I sort of take offense to people that sort of dismiss the theme, because everything is not 80s themed, you know, because there's gonna be exceptions to everything. Like I said, 2008, 2009 is a good exception. There's a couple other ones in there too, where you can just look at and go, well, that doesn't fit in. It's like, well, no, because there's going to be exceptions to everything. There just is. But the 80s theme also does. It was pointed out with Killer Clowns. Killer Clowns takes place in the 80s. Vamp takes place in the 80s. You can make an argument that Chucky takes place in the 80s, even though it's not specifically set in the 80s. The character was created in the 80s, so you can make an argument for that as well. So I mean, there is a theme, there is a theme, but it's just a loose theme. It's just enough. It gives you just enough to tie it in together, but it's not beating you over the head with it, or there to confuse people. Like the average person can look at the 80s. So and Chucky for me. I'll get to that in a minute. But Chucky for me, as a character, yay, technology. I hate fucking technology. I hate it. Technology hates me. But anyway, so you can, you can totally make a case for Chucky to be like an 80s thing. Okay. It is what it is. So there, and then of course you've got the stuff on the website, with the VHS tapes and stuff. Full disclosure, I actually knew about that a long time ago, and when I had heard about that, when I heard about the TV with the VHS tapes and stuff, I heard about that back in January. That was going to be on the website and stuff like that, and that to me sort of solidified this sort of loose 80s theme, because as a child in the 80s, I watched VHS tapes. That was all that was around. And that whole experience to me just screams 80s. So there it is there. Like I know, some people are now kind of like, pushing back on that a little bit, like with the whole 80s thing. It's there. It's just enough, to count. But it's there. But anyway, so, well, I'm already over my hour, and my thing keeps freezing on me. So I do want to go, into a little bit about the leaked, the rest of the leaked lineup that I will not confirm nor deny. I know that there's a lot of people out there that have been putting out their hype lists for things, for scare zones and houses and stuff. I am not going to do that for houses until everything is officially revealed. I don't know what's going on. Like it's twice now that it's gone away and like reconnected. It is what it is. Like technology hates me, so it's probably my fault. Technology and me do not get along at all. Well, okay, so here's the thing about that. Earlier in the video, I acknowledged Poltergeist and Halloween 4. So I acknowledge those, because those I cannot argue against. What I will not comment on is everything. Everyone seems to have, based off of this speculation map or somebody leaking everything out to the internet. I'm not going to comment on those. So that's why I won't. Yes, the last three houses. I'm not going to comment on those. I acknowledge the leak, the Universal leak, or the hotel leak. That one I acknowledge, and that's why I went into the whole tangent about the the hotel getting the graphics package, because I acknowledge that. And based on what I know, and I also was vague on this, one of those two houses was supposed to be announced before, and one of those houses was supposed to be announced this week, which is why I don't think it was a marketing fault that this was put up early. I think that the hotel put it up early on their own accord because one of those two houses was supposed to be announced this week. So it doesn't make any sense to me that marketing would have sent them this package, this graphics package, to run before second set house was supposed to be announced this week. I'm not going to reveal which one was supposed to be announced this week, but both of those houses were the one of them was supposed to be announced before, and one of them was supposed to be announced this week, which is why, to me, that the hotel leak, I can't pin on marketing because of what I'm being told. Now, what I'm being told could have been complete bunk. I'm just going on what I was told and have been told for weeks now. So that's why I'm saying that specific leak could not have been marketing's fault, because the hotel just put it up early, and it is what it is. Which is why, but again, we'll never know. We'll never know exactly what was said. We'll never know if that package came with, that graphics package came with, do not put up until this time. We'll never know. It's going to be, it's forever in the ether for people to debate and discuss. But what I'm specifically talking about is the entire event. I'm not going to confirm nor deny all of this stuff that's now floating around the internet. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is what it is. But what I'm specifically talking about when I say I won't comment on the leaks, it's the entire event. That stuff that's floating around out there now, whether or not that is true or fake. And also why, the other reason why I won't do it, and this might show my cards a little bit, is because if it's real or fake, I like to wait until everything is official. That's why I have not done a My Talking Head for Poltergeist or Halloween 4. I put up a blog about it. I did put up the blog. I refused to share the graphic that was floating around out there, but I put up a blog about it where I acknowledged the two houses based on what I know. But one of the other reasons why I won't do a list or talk about the entire lineup is because I like to wait. I like to wait until everything is official. I also like to wait for exactly. But I also like to wait for more information. So if, I'll give you a great example. Got into a little flack 2 weeks ago with my Carnival Graveyard My Talking Head video. I'm not hard up on Carnival Graveyard. I'm not over the moon about it. It is not one of my most anticipated houses for the year. One of the reasons for that is because I had been hearing about Carnival Graveyard for months. I mean months. And the only thing that I kept hearing about the house was that it was going to be scare zone-esque, meaning that it was going to feel more like a scare zone instead of a house. So it's a little bit more open, I think, than normal houses in the past. And that it was going to have evil carnies. Okay? So I was waiting for them to officially announce that house because I wanted to know more about the house. Because that one fact alone, about it being just evil carnies and clowns running around to kill you, is a boring concept to me. So what I wanted to know is if there was more to it, if there was more to the house, to get me more excited about it. And I didn't get it. I didn't get that. And even later, I'm not sure, because like I said, I don't read. Like I said before, I don't read, go into the Facebook forums and things of that nature. So I don't know what the general public's reaction was to Carnival Graveyard. But I find it interesting that after they revealed Carnival Graveyard, Blake Braswell had to basically go, I can't wait to tell you more about the house. Because I wonder if there was a little bit of flack because of the blandish sort of um, description of the house, what was going to be in the house, because it was that concept is just boring to me. I just don't, just it's very boring. So going back to what I was saying before, and like I said, I might show my cards a little bit. I want to hear more about houses when they're announced. Because I don't know, what other people know. All I know is what I know and what I'm being told about things. It's one of the reasons why. Well, I mean, because again, one of the other things that I say every year is just because a house is an original property, or just because a house is beautiful to look at, well, it's a carnival, so I wouldn't be surprised to see that either. But I'm just saying, it just seems like a golden nugget wrapped in a bland idea. And like I was saying a second ago, for me, and I say this every year, I don't automatically look at an original concept house and be like, it's an original concept house, so it automatically goes on the top. It's another thing that I like about some of the HHN fans that are out there, and even some of the websites that are out there too. They, if you look at, things now with some of these hype lists, people will automatically just put the originals on the top and the IPs on the bottom. Not because they're excited for them, but merely for the fact that they're original properties. And automatically they put the originals up at the top because they're original. And I'm not like that. I don't do that. So just because Carnival Graveyard is an original property, or because it could have this fantastic set design, doesn't automatically put it on the top for me. Because, especially with the set design part, at the end of the day, the house needs to scare me. And, that's the point of the house. If I want to look at set design, I'd watch documentaries about making movies, everything's got to be incorporated. So everything's got to flow together. Every year, the word I use when I talk about houses is flow, energy. And, just because a house looks pretty doesn't mean that it doesn't automatically make it a good house. I also got into some flack a couple years ago with the first American Horror Story house, because while that house, yes, was really nice to look at, that house was extremely boring for me. It was very repetitive, and there was nobody in there, and it did not do anything for me. Yes, it was a nice house to look at, but it didn't do anything for me. It didn't scare me. There was nothing in there. So and specifically we're talking about this, again, not confirming or denying anything, but if the speculation out there with this leaked lineup, total leaked lineup, not just the Poltergeist and Halloween stuff, is true, then I want to hear more about houses when they're announced. Because I can't just automatically look at something and go, yeah, that's on my top 10 list. Because, especially if you don't know anything about the event and you're just going off of the names of the houses. Well, I'm not saying that production values don't add anything to the house. What I'm saying is, because it is very hard to scare me these days, I need more inside the house than just looking at stuff. I used examples of last year as an example. Scarecrow. Scarecrow, I believe, in my hype list for that year, Scarecrow was not ranked high for me. I believe it was third or fourth that year. And number one for me, I believe, was Dead Waters, if I'm not mistaken. But last year, Scarecrow didn't need the elaborate sets Scarecrow relied on its atmosphere and unique scare tactics to work. And for me, Scarecrow was one of the scariest houses, not just of last year for me, but of all time, since I've been going to Halloween Horror Nights. It's the first time in a long time that I actually fell in a house. I got so scared in that house one run through, that I fell and into a wall. Like I literally fell into a wall because I got startled so bad. But it wasn't relying on that, over reliance of grand sets and lighting and things. It was all about atmosphere, and it was about how can they use the space that they have with what they have to create unique scares. On the flip side, you have something like American Horror Story, right? American Horror Story, people are going through American Horror Story to, yes, yeah, I agree. But with something like American Horror Story, where you're going through American Horror Story to experience the show. You want to go through and you want to be transported into the show, right? So the set design is gonna obviously add to that experience, because that's what you're there for. So to go for this year, I will spoil something for you for my. I haven't actually watched. I've never seen an episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog. So if they did, I would never have known. That was a little bit past my time in terms of Nickelodeons. I wasn't a fan of that show. My sister was a fan of Courage the Cowardly Dog, but I was not big on that. But anyway, so I'll give you a little bit of a spoiler for this year in terms of my hype list. I've said in the past that Slaughter Cinema is number one. Hands down, number one. And I said this way back then, and that's based off of what I already know about houses coming to the event. And I alluded in another video that there's going to be a house that had not been announced yet that was going to slide into that number two position. And that is Poltergeist. Because Poltergeist is not just one of the best horror films ever made, but for me, one of my favorite movies of all time. So it is also one of the last properties on my wish list of properties to come to the event. There's very few properties these days that I want to come to the event, because most of them have already come. So there's very, very few of those properties to come. But Poltergeist is one of those properties. So in terms of that, I'll show those cards. So number one is still Slaughter Cinema. Number two is Poltergeist. But going back to my original statement, if the list was true, I want to hear more about houses. I want to hear more about what they could or could not be planning for houses before I do a list like that, because I can't just can't look at a word or a name and go, okay, that's number one or that's number two, especially if I don't know anything about the event. How could you? That's like judging a movie based on a trailer. When you look at a trailer and go, that movie sucks. It's like, well, but did you see the movie? No. Then how do you know it sucks? Or how do you know it's good? Did you see the movie? That to me is like, I can't do that. So yeah. But what I will do, and this will be one of the last things I talk about, you've probably seen this on Twitter, I gave my hype list for the scare zones, which may or may not have gotten me into some trouble, but I gave my hype list for some scare zones. Bottom of the list for me is Vamp 85, followed by The Harvest, then Killer Clowns, then Twisted Tradition, and then Revenge of Chucky. The reason why Revenge of Chucky for me is number one is because I've heard a lot about what they want to do in this scare zone, and it makes me happy. And I love the character of Chucky. So, and if we're being real, the scare zones this year lack for me. This seems more like a year like 2016 in terms of scare zones, where I thought the scare zones last year had a lot more potential. This year just seems kind of like a throwaway year for scare zones. So there's not a whole lot in the list. People are freaking out about Vamp. I was not one of the people that were, oh my god, Vamp 55. Like, Vamp to me was 2016 was a year where the first Vamp was a year where the scare zones were not great. And the reason why Vamp 55 was able to, even Vamp 55, I didn't think was a very good scare zone. It was able to elevate because of the actors. The actors were able to bring more of that scare zone than what the scare zone actually was. They were able to hide the fact that Vamp 55 was not a good scare zone because they were able to play up with it. They were able to right. That's what I'm saying. The actors were able to bring more of that scare zone than what it was. But overall, I wasn't a huge fan of the scare zone. And something like Vamp 85 to me, doing a Vamp 85 just seems like, them going, hey, that was popular, and people were talking about a Vamp 85 since 2000, or a Vamp in the 80s since 2016. So that it tells me a couple things. A, they really do listen to what people say, and B, they just wanted to try to throw something into a piece of fans. And based on what I'm hearing about the scare zone, I just don't. It doesn't doesn't exactly fill me with confidence. I'll put it that way. On the flip side, I have Killer Clowns at number 3, and if you saw my talking head about the Killer Clown Scare Zone, I'm not a fan of the movie. I was told to see the movie a long time ago in high school, back when I was the AV nerd. Still am the AV nerd, kind of. But back when I was in high school, the film clubs that I was in, it was like, oh, you got to see Killer Clowns. Was not a fan of it back then. I've watched it a few times since then, even a couple of weeks ago when the Scare Zone was announced. I went back and rewatched it. Still not a fan, but I'm curious as to how they pull off the house. It's in a new location. We've never seen a Scare Zone on South Street before. It's a pretty tight location to put a Scare Zone, to be honest. And it's also one of the reasons why I don't think Vamp 85 is going to do that well, because I do not believe that Vamp 85 is going to have a lot more room to work with. So like in the past, when we've had scare zones in New York, they are splitting New York, yes. It was revealed that Killer Clowns, in the original release for Killer Clowns, it was not revealed that Killer Clowns was going to be on South Street. However, because that communication thing again that I talked about earlier, you have to have communication. If you go on to the Universal Orlando website and go to the Halloween Horror Nights section of that page, it says on there that Killer Clowns is going to be on South Street. So it's not, again, communication. You got to have doesn't say it on the blog where the Killer Clowns thing was announced, but it does say it on the Universal Orlando website. So if you go to the Universal Orlando website, go to the Halloween Horror Nights page, find the Killer Clowns thing, plain as day. Killer Clowns invade South Street. It says it right there. So we know that it's going to be on South Street based on that. So with Vamp is not going to, and I may or may not have seen the map. Vamp is going to, it's going to take up most of New York, okay, but not all of New York. So going up to the statue. I forgot his name. The statue guy that's in front of Louis there. Scare Zone will not go up to that statue. Scare Zone is either gonna stop on Delancey Street, Wasserman. Thank you. It's either gonna stop where Delancey Street is, or stop where Sting Alley is, based off of what I know. So it's not going to be all-encompassing New York Scare Zone like it was in the past. Mainly because Killer Clowns is on the other side on South Street, so they don't want the two scare zones sort of meshing with each other. They don't want. It's not going to be difficult because you're not going to have as much separation between the two scare zones. They're all going to be in close proximity. So They want as much separation as they can possibly have between two scare zones. So, but I am looking forward to seeing what they do with Killer Clowns, because I think even though I'm not, super excited about the scare zone or super excited, I don't like the movie that much. I am curious to see what they do with the scare zone. I want to see what they do with this space. I want to see how they use this space, because we've never seen it used before. Especially given what we're already told what's going to be in the scare zone. I'm really curious how they use South Street for this. So there's a lot of curiosity for me involved with the scare zone about how they're going to pull it off. The reason why I have Chucky as number one is because I love the character. I don't think Chucky is used as often as they should be. There's another sort of mentality that some of the diehards have, that Chucky is overused. How is Chucky overused? Like, he's like never there. He was, the last time he was here was in 2015, where he was in a scare zone, and then he was in 2009 before that. So it's like, how is he overused? He's never used. I like the character. I want to see the character come to the event. I like the character of Chucky, and I can only assume that. Yeah, he's not used here in Orlando. That's why I don't get it. But anyway, so I did see there was an audition call or an audition page a couple of months ago where they I'm pretty sure I saw that they were looking for people to impersonate Chucky's voice. They were looking for Chucky impersonators. Which I'm not sure where the hell that went, but it was like a blip on the radar and then it was gone. But it was there. I could have sworn I saw that they were looking for impersonators. So I don't know where that's going to be in the scare zone, how they're going to incorporate that in the scare zone. If what I'm being told is accurate, could not be accurate. I don't know. Things could have changed. The last couple of months. It is what it is. But yeah, so I'm really looking forward to it's so we'll go from the opposite way. So number 1, Chucky. Number 2, Twisted Tradition. Number 3, Killer Clowns. 4, The Harvest, and 5, Vamp. Harvest and Vamp, you can, if you want to, you can interchange those, I guess. Once I found out more about the Harvest and what it actually was, and what that it was basically the Altars of Horror of the year, that automatically sets it down a lot on the list. So you can, if you want to interchange those, you can. Twisted Tradition, I think has a lot more. I think that's based on what I'm being told. I think that's the idea. I think there's going to be I don't want to say I don't want to say too much, but I think there's going to be some kind of centralized Chucky somewhere, and that centralized Chucky is going to be, I don't want to say live talking, but they'll have words and things, it'll be interactive, quote unquote, with guests, based on the last thing that I was told. So, whether it's live or not, I don't know. I don't want to speculate too much because I just don't know that much. Based off of what I've already told about the scare zone, I think that there's a lot of room for them to play with this. I don't think Chucky will be offensive at all. I think you can just, but it also depends on what your level of offense is. It won't be that bad. Or I'll take that a step farther. Somebody worse than that was the worse than the Caterpillar was the guy from Containment. Was that 2009 Containment? The guy from Containment was worse than that. I actually have that on video. The guy from Containment was a lot worse from that. So the guy that was standing on top of the, which I believe became the Weyland Yutani truck later on, he was standing on top of that as you first entered into Containment. He was way worse than the other guy. So, way worse. But yeah, so that's my scare zone thing. It's on my Twitter page. I'll do when everything is revealed, I'll do an official hype list and stuff, and I'll talk more detail about why I'm excited about certain things and why why they fall on the list or whatever. But for now, I'll just keep that as just the scare zones because I don't want to, um, I don't want to show my cards too much. But yeah, so we'll wait until everything is revealed because I want to play nice too. It's like, I don't like spoiling things either. That's why I don't do hints really or clues or things. Because you have all these insiders that give hints and clues to things. I don't really like to do that. Like this year, what I did was on my Instagram page. I've been putting up throughout the course of this entire season, photos and things from past events and whatnot with quotes, and some of those quotes tie into things. Some of them don't. It's a lot of them are just things that I was feeling at the time. But some of them also tied into some things, and some of them didn't. But there were no hints given. There was nothing that was trying to tease people about hints and stuff. I don't like to do that. I'm more a person that comes from old school mentality about anticipation, waiting and stuff. Even though I know what's coming, I don't like to spoil it for other people unless they want to be spoiled. If you want to be spoiled, then I'll tell you in private. But I don't. I don't like to spoil. I just don't. There are instances where circle of friends, we discuss things because I want to talk about things with people, who are who I can trust, who won't spoil things, but out to the public. But I don't like to do that. So I've never been that way. I did clues 1 year. 1 year I did clues. I think that was back in 2015. That was the only time I ever did that. But I did it more because it was an anniversary year, and I said, "What the fuck, Who cares? It's an anniversary year, and everybody was excited." So I did it that 1 year. I never did it after that. I never gave clues or anything like that after that. Just don't like to do that. But anyway, I've gone a half an hour over my time. Yeah, it takes all the fun out of it. It's like I'll when people, there have been years, in recent years, where people have, spoiled the entire event in February. Okay, why would you do that? Just because you can, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Well, okay. So now that I've pretty much talked about what I want to talk about, if you got questions, just send me questions. But in terms of that question, do I think that it will affect Horror Nights? Yes, but I don't think it will affect Horror Nights as badly as some people think it will. You have to look at it this way. Again, looking at the bigger picture, it's going to be more of an issue for Hollywood. Okay, even though I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue, it's still going to be more of an issue for Hollywood because Warner Brothers Studios and Universal Studios are direct competitors. They're right down the street from each other. So this isn't something where, up until this year, really, Universal's only competitor in terms of the theme park haunt was not Scary Farm. That was the closest competitor they had. You can count Six Flags, but Six Flags is still, it's about the same distance away from Knott's Berry Farms, I believe, maybe a little bit more. And you have little haunts around. You have the Queen Mary thing and some other little things around there, but their biggest competitor was not Scary Farm. That was their closest competitor. In the case of this is right down the street. They're like 7 miles from each other. So it's going to be more of a direct competition for Universal Hollywood. It will be a little bit tougher for them to get IPs. Warner Brothers has said as such. They weren't specifically calling out Universal, but they were calling out Universal. It's going to be more tougher for them to, yes, nail down IPs from Warner Brothers. But you also have to look at it this way. Universal and Warner Brothers have a good working relationship. They have to with Harry Potter. They have to have a good working relationship. They have to have some kind of kumbaya between the two companies. Otherwise, Harry Potter would never have worked. So the companies have, they have that rapport with each other. Case in point, Trick or Treat. Trick or Treat is a Warner Brothers property. I can tell you at this point that there were two properties that were coming to the event this year, both coasts. Two specific properties. And I won't reveal what they are. They are in the Warner Brothers thing this year. I'll say that much. Two of those properties were supposed to come. Halfway through, they got scrapped because Warner Brothers wanted to do their own thing. I was told that, based on what I'm told, this is all going on what I'm being told. Based off of what I was told, there was a little bit of a rift between the two companies where, they were like, well, but we were going to do this, but I don't think there was an official contract ever signed with some of these with these two specific properties that were supposed to come but didn't, and are now in the Warner Brothers. What's that thing called? What's the Warner Brothers thing called? God, what the hell's it called? Whatever the Warner Brothers thing called. The two properties that were supposed to be coming are now in that. Horror Made Here. Thank you. They are in there. So they canceled them here. I will not confirm nor deny that, but two of those properties were supposed to come, and they are now in there. However, Trick or Treat is also on Warner Brothers property. So what happened there, based on what I'm told, is that based on what I was told. No, they did not get lucky on The Exorcist or The Shining. Because again, they have a good working relationship with Warner Brothers. So this isn't something where, Warner Brothers out of spite was like, no, you can't do this. As a matter of fact, Exorcist is being used this year at that thing, at the Horror Made Here thing in California. So it's entirely possible that Warner Brothers said, we're going to use that next year. You want to use it, or 2 years from now, we're going to use that. We're going to use that then. If you want to use it now, you can use it now. It's entirely possible. Because they do have a good working relationship with each other. They have to, because they have Harry Potter. They have to have a good working relationship. The two studios have to coexist. They have to talk to each other. They have to have a good symbiotic relationship. Otherwise, Harry Potter is not going to work. So that friendship is there. So I don't think this is out of spite. I don't think this is out of where you can never use this. No, because they just want to do their own thing. They want to dip their water. They want to dip their toe in the water and do their own thing. It could be a complete disaster. It could very well be a complete disaster. I don't think it will. It'll definitely get butts there. I can tell you that. But it could be poorly executed. It could not work. And next year, they could be begging Universal to take these properties and do an It or do Freddy Krueger or whatever. It is what it is. No, but the thing is, but Warner Brothers can't. Warner Brothers has the resources. Correct, but Warner Brothers, just like Universal, has the resources to be something like a Halloween Horror Nights. They have those resources. It's not like like a Busch Garden situation where, not putting down Howl-O-Scream, but Howl-O-Scream just doesn't have the money that Universal Orlando has to make Halloween Horror Nights. So they have to do things a little bit differently. Yeah, well, I mean, that's probably part of it. Warner Brothers has their own things at different amusement parks around the country. So, it's not, something where, they have the Six Flags stuff and whatnot. All the DC characters are there. And you have, some of the other characters, roaming around Six Flags. So it's not like they don't have a piece of, that stuff out there already. They just want to do their own thing, and I say, they want to do their own thing. So more power to them. But in the case of Trick or Treat, I think what happened there is they decided on Trick or Treat last year, very early on last year, if I was to be a betting man. So they couldn't sort of weasel out of any kind of agreements that they might have had with Universal at the time. So that's why Trick or Treat is still here. I think in the case of, yes, it and Nightmare on Elm Street, in the case of those two properties, I don't think it got far enough along where they nailed everything down. And I think there was more gentlemen's agreements with those two properties for Halloween Horror Nights this year than there were actual paper contracts for those two properties. So Warner Brothers was able to say, no, we want to do these over here. So, but in the case of Trick or Treat, because that was done last year, or the decision to do it last year was probably more the reason why it's still here this year than the other two properties. That's my guess with that. You talking about it or Nightmare on Elm Street? Because let me tell you something. Nightmare on Elm Street shit. Okay, I'll show my cards a little bit. The Nightmare on Elm Street crap. When that was being done, because I think Nightmare on Elm Street was much farther along than it was before they pulled both. That was a disaster. I'm actually very glad that Nightmare did not show up this year, because that would have been a complete disaster at the time. Based on what I was being told about the house at the time, that was going to be a disaster. That was not going to work. So, I'm glad it's not here this year. I'm actually glad that did not show up. It is a thing where Universal was just happy because the property was a mega success, right? But at the end of the day, it is such a minuscule property compared to Stranger Things that they didn't care. So they were like, and I don't think they wanted the headache because of, with The Shining last year, you really had to hound into people's heads that The Shining did not have Stephen King's approval. That The Shining was not, Stephen King did not want it. It was based on, Stanley Kubrick's version alone. Stephen King had nothing to do with this, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I think with it, they would have had a little bit more of a problem, because for all intents and purposes, what I was told was that King was on board for it this year. And they're using it at Warner Brothers. So, and his infamous, I don't want anything being used as, horror haunted houses or whatever. I don't think he really, I think he's starting to pull back a little bit. I think he's coming around to the possibilities that his properties would do well as a haunted attractions or whatever. But with it, Stephen King has a little bit more of a hold on that property. So he would have, well, of course, but I think he would have a little bit more of a say, and I guarantee you he does over at the Horror Made Here thing in Warner Brothers. He's got a little bit more of a say of what can be used, what can't be used, because the Shining situation was something where Stephen King, in his very early days of his stuff being turned into movies and properties and stuff, he didn't have very much control over that. That was, he's basically just licensing his properties out to other people. He's on record numerous times with his displeasure of Stanley Kubrick's version of The Shining, and it was kind of soon after that he got more of a reign on his properties, for better or worse. Over the course, now we're in like a second Stephen King renaissance, where, because I remember as a kid, in the late 80s and throughout the 90s, the Stephen King miniseries was a big fucking deal. Like, it was like when Stephen King had a miniseries or something that was debuting on television, that was a big deal. Like, it's back in the days where they still did fucking miniseries. They don't do miniseries anymore, but that was a big deal when it was coming, or The Stand, or The Langoliers. Like, that was huge. Like, those were big deals, But the vast majority of Stephen King properties, the Tommyknockers, the vast majority of Stephen King properties, this is just my opinion, be it movies or television series, horror properties, do not translate well to screen. They just don't. Stephen King horror is a very hard thing to pin down, be it in miniseries form or a movie form. It's not really until recently that, especially with It, I mean, it just blew the top off things. But the last couple of years or so, Stephen King movies, horror films, is the films based on horror properties have been good. And that's rare to have a Stephen King movie or a horror property that's actually good. Most of the good Stephen King adaptations are dramas. You look at Stand By Me, you look at Shawshank Redemption, you look at The Green Mile, stuff like that. Like those are like where his most successful adaptations are. His horror properties just kind of fall flat. And when you look at the the miniseries stuff, those are the worst of the worst. Like stuff like the Langoliers and the Tommyknockers, and even like the awful Carrie miniseries and stuff like that. Like those are they just don't work. They're so hard to translate. But with this new renaissance, this new Stephen King renaissance coming with It and Pet Sematary and Gerald's Game and 1922, Tim Curry was good as Pennywise, but he was hamming it up. I mean, he's more famous for being Pennywise because he was hamming it up as Pennywise. And the surrounding movie was such garbage that he was chewing so much scenery in that miniseries that anything anything coming from that character was gonna totally outshine everything else around it. In my opinion, that miniseries is just so bad that he stood out because he was so good in that role. Hamming it up and chewing the scenery. He was such a scene chewing person in that miniseries that it just outshadowed all the bad of that horrible miniseries. But these days, like I said, because of this renaissance, the Stephen King renaissance that's happening with all these, adaptations, it was a risk. The movie It was a risk. It was a troubled production. A lot of people don't know that about It. I still want to see what the Cary Fukunaga directed It movie looks like. That was, I want to see what that looks like because that's what was going to happen before Andrew Muschietti got a hold of it. Different things. There's still some things from the Cary Fukunaga version that made it into this It movie. One of that was the clown Pennywise coming out of the projector thing. That was, I believe, taken directly from Cary Fukunaga's story. But regardless, I think that with the success of that, and because his movies are being done justice, his horror movies are now finally being done justice. Whether it's It or the Pet Sematary is still kind of up in the air. But Gerald's Game. If you're not seen Gerald's Game. Based on an awful Stephen King novel. That is not one of his best, or novella, not one of his best stories. But the movie is fucking phenomenal. It's one of the best movies of the year, of last year. If you have not seen Gerald's Game, I'd highly recommend looking it up on Netflix. Minus the last 5 or 10 minutes of that movie, the rest of it is fucking phenomenal. But I think that since we're in this sort of renaissance or whatever, Stephen King might be sort of pulling back a little bit, trusting other people with his things, as opposed, because I think he got so burned by Stanley Kubrick, he never recovered from that. So for a long time, he was just really, really, really kind of reining in on his stuff. That I love Gerald's Game, man. That movie was so good. And but the funny thing about it is it's a horror. It's not one of Stephen King's better stories. I'm a huge Stephen King fan. I haven't read a lot of newer Stephen King, but one of the first books I ever read as a kid was Pet Sematary. I read that when I was 8 years old. And, that still to this day gives me fucking nightmares. The book, the movie is not very good, but the book, if the new Pet Cemetery can, I was never a big fan of it. I'll throw that out there. The book, the book's okay. I know it's one of his more popular novels, but I was not a huge It book person, and I didn't like the miniseries. I liked the movie, the movie that came out. I thought the movie got a little overhyped for what it was, but it's still a solid movie. But I don't mean any harm. I'm just saying, like, I was not a huge It book person. That was not my cup of tea when I was a kid. I was more of the Pet Cemetery type. It's okay. I mean, people like different things. It is what it is. I like it. I like the book, but it's not something that I was not. It's not one of my favorites that way. But as an 8-year-old kid reading Pet Cemetery for the first time, Pet Cemetery is amazing. That is still, to this day, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. Yeah, still to this day, like that book, I have never seen, except maybe for The Exorcist, seen nor read anything as scary as Pet Cemetery. But it's probably because I still have rose-colored glasses on because I read it when I was 8 years old. But that book is still fucking horrifying to me. But anyway, the point is, I know he doesn't like Pet Sematary, but the point is that I think these days he's a little bit more trusting in people with his properties, because I do think that he was hurt so bad by the Stanley Kubrick version of The Shining that he never fully recovered from that afterwards. So he gained just more control over the stuff that he had and the stuff that he wanted to do. But now I think he's starting to ease that a little bit, which is a good thing, and that includes stuff like doing haunted houses and things of that nature. And to bring it back to the original point, I based on everything that I know, he was on board. He was on board to do it. But Maximum Overdrive was just so bad. That's such a horrible movie. He had no business doing that. So, I mean, even to this day, it doesn't even have like a so bad it's good thing for me. It's just a bad movie. Like I can go back and I can watch like the It miniseries. I think that has coupled with Tim Curry as Pennywise. You can, even though the miniseries is bad, it has one of those so bad it's good type of things for me where I can go back and I can have fun with it. Maximum Overdrive, I just can't. I've tried watching it a couple times, and I cannot sit through Maximum Overdrive. So, but anyway, so I think that he's whatever. The original question: do I think that it's going to affect Universal? Probably, but not as bad as I think some people think it's going to. The Warner Brothers think, because the two studios have a good working relationship. So at least right now, anything could, it'd be horrible if the two studios were to have a rift because of Harry Potter. They have to have a good working relationship. Both studios right now are making money off each other with Harry Potter. So, it's like, they're both siphoning off money through each other with the Harry Potter stuff. So, I don't see it being that big of a deal right now unless Warner Brothers gets greedy, unless Warner Brothers, just is like, we're never going to give you any more properties to use. I just don't see that happening. I think the rapport between the two companies is just too strong for them to never share any properties. With that being said, I think people, in their overreaction to it, are forgetting that Universal Studios created the horror movie. So, it's like they have a mine of their own stuff. I know you're going to have not just what the Universal Classic Monsters, but and then now with their deal with Blumhouse, they have their own stuff that they could use. They don't have to mine. The other thing that people keep overlooking is not just Warner Brothers. You can kiss, in my opinion, you can kiss any Fox properties goodbye for the foreseeable future. So you're going to lose Warner Brothers and you're going to lose Fox as well. But Warner Brothers is a malleable thing because of the rapport that the two companies have. Doesn't mean they can never use any property again. I just don't believe that. I believe that the friendship between the two companies is just too strong. I think in terms of Fox, you have a bigger problem. But they also have their own company. You've got their own company. Mine your shit. Go through your catalog. You created the horror movie. You are horror made there. You are the horror movie. So I mean, they have their own stuff they can mine from. So I just don't think it's that big of a deal right now. I think if it gets to 5 years down the road, and we've seen The Purge for the 9,000th time, because that's all they have, then I'd be worried. But right now, I'm not worried. I just think the companies have too good of a relationship right now for it to be that big of a deal. In terms of competition doesn't matter for Orlando. The competition matters for Hollywood and one could argue that can only up Hollywood's game. Hollywood, who knows? Maybe next year, Murdy might not be around anymore, and there'll be somebody else in charge, and somebody else doing the event. So with that comes new ideas. You could do original content. It's not like they've done versions of original ideas based on, IP properties, but who knows? Maybe next year or in the near future, you can see a new person who is taken over, creating their own original stuff. It can only, because of the competition. I don't think that this is a situation where because they're going to run out of properties to use. I think because of the competition, it's going to over in Hollywood, it's going to cause them to up their game more. What's the Funhouse? I don't know what the Funhouse is. I've never heard of that one before. Is that a Horror Nights house or is that a movie? I know there's a movie called The Funhouse, but or at least I think there is. But I overall though I don't see the Okay, so it is the movie. Okay, I was like, I know it's a movie. It's like, was that a Horror Nights house? Was Horror Nights even back? No, it wasn't back. But yeah, so. I don't know. Murdy to me seems like the type of guy who might be done. I think he's run his. I'm not trying to start any rumors or anything, but just the way that he presents himself these days, I think that he's just like meh. Yeah, I just think that he's just like, you know what, maybe it's time for me to retire. And I'm sure traveling back and forth from Ireland doesn't help matters much either. I don't know. It's hard to say. I know there were a bunch of rumors last year that was going to be his last year, or last year was going to be his last year, and that obviously didn't come to pass. But it wouldn't surprise me if Murdy is not around for too much longer. If he passes the baton to somebody else. And with that, we've seen it here at Horror Nights. With Mike not the guy anymore. We've seen a little bit of a shift. I would argue that with Patrick being in charge last year and this year, especially last year, there was a different mental shift in how they presented houses and how they presented scare zones and how they did things. Things were done a little bit differently last year, and I would also argue that the result shows that. The result of last year shows that. So. Because people come at things differently. People, Mike had a very different mentality. James Macarati had a very different mentality. I forget her name, but the lady who started Horror Nights had a different mentality as well. And then Mike, Patrick had a different mentality, and people have different styles, different flavors that people do different things. So, but anyway, I've gone over past an hour now. Julie Zimmerman, thank you. Yes, but I think like I said, the healthy competition I think is only really affects Hollywood. You made me talk for 2 hours. Good thing I'm off, or not off. I don't have to be at work until 9 tonight. But yeah, so I think that the direct competition really only applies, or the competition wise, I don't think Orlando has anything really to worry about. I think people are freaking out more so because they wanted it to come to Halloween Horror Nights, and obviously didn't come to Halloween Horror Nights, and it's coming to Warner Brothers. And because it was such a huge movie, they're like, oh my God, how can Horror Nights survive? It's like Horror Nights survived for 27 years before it can survive now. It's not like, they don't need it to survive. But yeah, I don't think it's, at least right now, well, because I think like I said, Warner Brothers, the horror made here thing could be a complete disaster. We just don't know. We won't know until it happens. Oh, no problem. Are there any other questions before I go? Because I probably should go. Anybody have any other questions? I have messages coming. I can tell you that. Whoop. No problem. No problem. Any other questions? Any other questions? No other questions? I hope I got my point across. So I go on tangents sometimes, which is why when I do my Talking Head videos, I force myself. Okay. Well, here's the thing: is I usually do the Chatcasts a couple times a year, but I've been too busy this year, so I really haven't had time to do the live things. And I just don't feel like fighting technology most of the time. But I'll try to do another one right before the event starts, and then I'll do another one probably at the end of the event. So, but you could always, like, the My Talking Heads they will always be a thing. So that'll always happen. But I try to force myself to do 10 minutes all the time. Oh, no problem, guys. All right, I'm going to get out of here. See you guys later.